Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning here at Met Howitt Homes Death Cafe, facilitated by Bo Thrasher, and a couple of house things. I might put folks on mute if there's suddenly a lot of interference background noise. And so if you want to speak, just make sure that your mute is turned off. And there's also the chat. There's your hands. We're going to be on two screens. I'll let Bo also, facilitate how she wants to see the participation. But this is going to be a very open Zoom. And so we're hoping that you feel free to share today. And this is a program from our Get Ready campaign. Met Howitt Home has been launching this year what's going to be an ongoing annual curriculum that's just intended to support community readiness, the whole community, for the challenges and the opportunities of aging and getting older. And talking about death is one of those things. Things change and loss happens, and our culture really hasn't done the greatest job of opening a safe space to talk about these things and to work with it. So, because it's really hard and it's painful, but it's work. What, like Mr. Rogers said, if we can talk about it, then we can manage it. I don't know if manage is what he said exactly. Anyway, I'm going to hand the baton off to you, Bo. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here.
All right. Thank you so much for coming to this Death Cafe, which is such a kind of unusual name. And I'll explain a little bit about the history of death cafes, but many of you I know and some of you I don't. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I hope you feel free to share in this discussion. I just wanted to give a little intro about why I got interested in end of life work, because that's one of the reasons I'm sitting here right now, and I'll make this brief. I was a teacher over in Bellingham teaching 8th grade, and one of my students was killed in a car accident. She was 14, and her parents did the most beautiful vigil, 3-day vigil for her in her home, and a home funeral. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. I was young, I was 27, and one of my first introductions into death and dying. So that kind of really went into my heart as an experience that I would never forget. A couple years we did the same thing. We had a 3-day vigil, washed her body at home, had a home funeral, and that is kind of my experience of what death could be, and the experience of being with a dying person. And finally, when my mother passed away, I was just amazed by the beauty and the care of the hospice workers that were with her, and I was able to be with her when she died, and then be able to sit with her for some hours afterwards. And right then, I just knew that I wanted to work with people at end of life. And, I realized that the circle of life and death is birth and death, and one is a beautiful thing and one is a very sad thing, but it is part of life, and we're all going to be born and we all will die. And so why can't, and I wanted to just bring some sort of cultural shift like birth has had in the last 30 years, where we talk about death, we prepare for it, we maybe change the way we do things with funerals and being with the dying, and not to be, it is fearful, but not to be afraid of being with those who are dying and talking about it and thinking about how perhaps we see death and we view our own death. So that's how I kind of got interested in this work. And the end of life doula is an interesting thing we can talk about at some point, but really a doula is not like hospice. We are non-medical professionals who really advocate for the dying, whether it be giving respite to caregivers or helping with advanced planning, giving comfort and emotional support to the dying and the family, working with hospice and the medical profession to help the comfort of the dying person, and also maybe working with the aftercare, say home funeral or whatnot. So if there's more questions on that, we can talk about that, or we can do another sort of session on that, but feel free to ask questions if you'd like. So the Death Cafe, interesting name. It started in 2010 over in England by a man named John Underwood, who was doing, just like he was doing a series of projects on death. And one thing I didn't know is that over in Europe, they have this thing where they meet up in cafes and talk about taboo subjects, and not necessarily with people they know, with strangers. And so John Underwood started this with talking about death. And, this is kind of where you open the closet of talking about death, these bigger conversations come. And actually, yes, you're talking about death, but you're also talking about life and living and how you want to live your life. And so he began those over in England, and that was in 2010. And unfortunately, he has passed away since then, but his family has kept this going. And then now there are many of these happening in the States. So a death cafe is just a directed discussion of death, and not necessarily directed. It really doesn't have an agenda or a theme. I do have some questions if we need, but I just wanted to that way with this question, and please feel free to tell us why you're here. Like what brought you here to this death cafe, and what interests you about talking about death, or what doesn't interest you, or just what brought you here?
I go. Cool. Welcome, everyone. Well, I don't know. It's like death is such a taboo subject. That's one thing that I'm. Anyway, I'll be brief. I unplugged my dad in 2009. Okay, in Everett at whatever hospital that was. That was a horrific experience, and there was medical complications that could have been avoided on top of that. So and then I had Neptune. So that was dealt with. But he died. I watched him die, took his last horrific breath, threw the sheet over him, see ya, and then got his ashes in a week. That wasn't my favorite experience. My mom died in a nursing home, and we had a very problematic relationship, and I supported her the best I could. But when she died, I was there holding her hand, and when she took her last two breaths, I witnessed it. And then the caregivers came. I notified the caregivers. It was at 11 o'clock at night. They came, washed her body. I helped with that. Ended up taking cut a piece of cut a plywood in half, and came in with duct tape and plastic, put her on. We transferred her onto the plywood, double wrapped her, because you got to do that in Washington. Next time I would get a cardboard casket, but I didn't know none of that. I got the transportation certificate to move her body that day. And so it was just crazy. I was super supported by a funeral director on Whidbey Island where I was. And so so we took my mom's body home, did a 3-day vigil. It was amazing. There's so much that can happen, that does happen in that sacred space. Family members healing, it's the opportunity for so much to go on. It was amazing. So that's, in a little nutshell, that's why I'm here to share that. And also, my mother-in-law just took a horrific fall last Friday night. She's in the hospital down in Brewster. I'm running on fumes. And so death is definitely on, my, on the horizon. So yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Byron. I think, you bring up for me a very there's things that you can do when someone dies that we have more power and more decisions than we can if we are supported by, like you said, a funeral director who is open to those things. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm glad you had that opportunity with your mom. It's very powerful.
Well, I'm happy to speak up and be brief. My interest in these conversations comes from me having the good fortune of having a most profound, loving experience with the end of life and passing of both of my parents. Almost fairy tale, unbelievably beautiful. And so I've thought a lot about how fortunate I am for that, and would like to be able to somehow help other people have an experience that's closer to that. And I know there's a lot of complications, but that's what I think. I think that if we can take back death like we took back childbirth and empower people to be more in charge of the end of their lives and their loved ones' lives, that would be an awesome healing thing for our culture.
Thank you, Annie.
I'm happy to share my experience as well. I supported a dear friend who was dying of ovarian cancer, and at the hospital, as well as bringing her home and kind of having her end of life at home and with family coming through and stuff. And I didn't know this, but at the time, hospice sort of pulled me aside after watching all of that and said, you actually have a real talent for this. I don't know if it's because I was so, over the moon in love with these people. And so I was able to show up for them, but it piqued my interest. And so I've been interested to learn more.
Yarrow, could you just tell us where you're from? And I
grew up in Oregon and spent.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, I grew up in Oregon and spent 20 years in Seattle, and I've been out here for about 2 years in Mazama.
Oh,
Great.
thank you. Anyone else want to share what even brought them to this Death Cafe this morning?
I'll say hello.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Louisa. I am in Wacondas. I'm on the east side of Okanagan County, probably about 70, 80 miles from you folks. And I became an end-of-life doula last year. So it's something I'd always wanted to do, and I didn't have a name for it. My boyfriend and I retired up here theoretically in 2019. So I was just up here planting my gardens, enjoying the wilderness. And then I saw an article about doulas and I was like, that's it. That's what I wanted to do. So I sort of unretired and came out and got trained. Not a lot of training involved. It's just more a matter of the heart. There's some practical things it's good to know, but there's no regulation for doulas yet. But I can help with people who do advanced planning work. I can help, as Bo said, with respite care. It's kind of like we fill in the gaps, and it's emotional support. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's definite role. So I'm sure doulas as a group will be working on that definition as time goes on. So if you have any questions about dueling, ask me or Bo. We're glad to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, we just found each other, which is really sweet. So I have another question too, and this can be kind of intertwined with why you're here. But have you ever thought into yourself what a good death might be for you? Like what does actually a good death mean? to you?
Quick.
Well, I could talk a little bit.
Okay, Lori. Yeah.
One of the things I'm interested in is what are your options when you die for, like green burial? And because we've always, in my family, we've always done the cremation and then having a ceremony and spreading the ashes. And I was down a couple of years ago at Beaver Creek Cemetery, and I was very moved. I thought, wow. I mean, my grandparents have an urn in a big fancy mausoleum kind of thing in Seattle. And I used to go there as a kid, but I always thought it was so weird. But being outside in that cemetery, I thought, it's really nice to have a place to go and just sit and contemplate someone's life. And what would my loved ones want that, or would I want that? And then this whole thing about cremation came out, about how it's actually quite toxic on the environment. And so I'm interested in learning a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. Trace and I have just started work on trying to provide resources to people about just those things. And we're doing, a little bit of research and talking to people about it. But as far as green burial goes, I think there's one cemetery in Chisaw where that is possible. But Washington State is only one of 2 states that will not allow you to bury your own on your property either, which is kind of interesting.
I know.
Yeah. So we are working on some resources as to like how cremation, or there's this new company over in Seattle called Recompose. I don't know if you've heard of that. They will take your body and for 30 days compost it, and then you can have the soil back and put it on your land. So there are different options, and there's people working on various things here in the Mettel, from how to have a green burial site, and to how to have the resources for your home funerals or vigils or things like that. Trace, did you want to add anything?
Sure.
Oh, Betsy.
Yeah, Betsy's hand just.
Just that we are going to have a session from People's Memorial, which is a great resource to learn about all options regarding handling a body after death. And this is going to be April 6th, I think.
Yeah.
You can look on our calendar, but the person who's going to speak is very knowledgeable about the different options of how to handle the body. And you can look on the People's Memorial website, and there's a ton of information. It is true that just because of where we live, getting a body after death to a place which manages the body differently is it's really helpful to plan ahead and about that kind of thing.
Yeah, but you can do it. You just need a transportation permit like Byron got from the county, and you can get that at the Department of Health. And Bo and I are talking about kind of getting a store of those cardboard, boxes.
Caskets.
I think caskets. And, I do think at one point Beaver Creek was considering opening up to having burial without the vault. That's what basically, to my mind, I'm just like, it's really important to me personally that my molecules go back into life. And if we are in a concrete box and in a casket, that's not going to be happening, and anytime within the next 1,000 years or so, whatever. So I think that if enough people do go to Beaver Creek and tell them that that is an important option to them and that they want that, I think that they would be open to revisiting that idea, because it came close to fruition, and then it's an issue really about like the ground settling and making it hard to mow or whatever. So I think that there's possibilities. So I'm going to just put that plug out there to let them know there that as a consumer, you'd be interested in that.
Yeah, Byron.
Hey, thanks. Hey, I gotta go. My mother-in-law is down in the hospital in Brewster, and so, but I just wanted to get a flavor for this. This is really nice. There's so much resources already that you guys have talked about. I heartily encourage everyone to sign off and let this be recorded. Let this recording go out. I do audio, and so I would really love to have an audio. If you would send me. Tracy, if everybody can sign off and agree that they could share it with me, I'd love to hear the rest of this. I think it's going to be rich. Thank you so much. Be well.
Thank you, Byron. Yeah, appreciate it. Take care.
Yep.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, somebody said a good death would be quick. I know it's sort of a strange, when I did my training, we were asked to kind of think about our death, and that's something I had never actually done before. And I'm just curious if other people have thought about or done planning, like Betsy said, as far as what, your advanced directives or any sort of planning regarding your death.
I'd like to say something about a good death, and I think regarding planning for our deaths, we can do that to a certain degree, but we don't know if we're going to slip on the ice and die. But I think planning is really good, and I think it's really good to write down our wishes, so our family has that and knows what we would like. My mother, I think, had the most wonderful death. It's been more than 20 years, but it's still hard to talk about it. But she went into, she had COPD and was living in an adult family home. And she went into I don't know if I have the right terminology, but she was in a coma state, but could still hear us. And we had hospice care in the adult family home, and we knew she was going to die. And the adult family home people, we went to them and asked them if she could stay there, rather than transferring her somewhere, because we felt like the transfer would kill her right away. So for the next 4 days, my sisters and I were able to be with her. My older sister and I took turns spending the night with her, and my younger sister, who had just had hip surgery, she would come every day, and the three of us would sit with her. Her friends came. We had a woman who was a dear friend and did a Reiki treatment with her. My very devout Catholic friend gave her, prayed with her. We had somebody coming in singing. Her lovely Italian friend, was there just full of life. And the last night, the first night I was there, I said, oh my God, please don't die, because with just me, my dream was that all three of us could be with her. And the last, so the fourth day, I woke up, my sister had been with her, and I went down to the florist, and I bought 2 dozen roses, because I just felt like today was going to be the day. My sisters and I were able to be with her, all three of us holding her hand. And it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful for each of us. We bathed her, and and just stayed with her for several hours before we called the funeral home to come and take her. So that was pretty nice. If I were to choose my death, I would like to have my whole family there.
Thank you, Frauke. Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate what you said as well, that we obviously can't plan our death. You know, when we talk about a good death, that there's that, right? That's what we would hope for. And I think that you bring up a good point as far as really being prepared at any time, because, you know, having the family and your friends and the people what you wanted, and therefore make it easier to fulfill those wishes. So I don't know how many people have done the advance directive at all, but I'm starting to work on that with my friends, and just even doing the act of filling out those advanced care directives is a process in itself that brings up a lot of good discussion and thinking. And, you know, like I said, it's not, people are like, what are you thinking about death so much for? I'm like, I'm not, because it's like thinking it, like I said, it's thinking about life and how we want to live it and how we want to support others in that. So thank you, Frauke, and all of you.
This is Deirdre, and I'm not going to show my face because I'm putting this lip stuff on my lips because I have some skin issues going on there. But anyway, I just want to say something that really piqued my interest was a video that I saw, and it was a death doula. And this lady was living in I don't know if it was assisted living or independent living home, but the death doula came to her and they planned out the entire, the ceremony for her, and the kind of flowers that she wanted, the poems that she wanted. She had some friends that came in and were chosen to do some dances, and it was so beautiful. And I'll share it with this group if I can find it. I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there, but the one that I saw was just beautiful. It just brought tears to my eyes, and I thought, yeah, that would be really fun to work with you, Bo, and go through, like what kind of music do I want? Who do I want there? Do I want it to be a real public thing, or, more private? Just starting to think about all those things. What do you want once you're gone? And then, I think she was cremated in the end, but, her body was there for 3 days, and people, they bathed her body, and they put flowers all around her entire box, a casket. It was just beautiful. So I'll try to find that and share that with everybody. And my granddaughter's waking up, so I have to run now.
Well, thank you, Deirdre, for sharing.
I am listening.
I want to say something about that, because not to be the devil's advocate, but Jeff had a friend, my husband had a friend who had pancreatic cancer and actually survived for about 2 or 3 years. And he was a therapist himself, and he orchestrated his entire memorial. And we went to it, and I'd never been to something where the person who's deceased is the one who orchestrates down to who spoke and what the flower, like Deirdre's talking about. And personally, I'm sure it's individual with every situation, but it seemed really kind of stilted to me. And I've thought about that for myself, like, oh yeah, I would have them play that song because that's my favorite song. And people would think about me. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I think sometimes you have to figure out what works for you. I get that. But sometimes, part of dying is just letting go. Because I remember when my mom died, my aunt said, honey, life is for the living. You got to move on. And it was kind of tough love thing, but it was true. And to a certain degree, I think when you are doing a memorial, you want the people that are left to have a say in it. You know what I'm saying? And anyway, so that's just my other side of the coin type thing.
Right. I totally agree with you. It's an individual thing. It's not for everybody. Phil said, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. You know, you guys figure out what you want from me.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, no, it's great, Laura. I'm glad you brought that up. There's obviously different sides and how people feel and what they want. I asked my dad recently, Dad, like, okay, let's talk about your memorial, just so I know what you want. And he said, I just want you to play he was a Marine, so some Marine song, and do what you want after that, But I thought just the important thing is asking the question. The important thing is talking about things like this that aren't normally talked about. And maybe someone will want to plan the whole thing and maybe someone will want nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? It's more the communication about it, I think. Yeah.
My thought process is that when you die, you're already leaving your loved ones with a lot of stuff. And if there's anything you can do to take their having to do things off the table for you, that would be good. So making it as easy as possible for your loved ones to say goodbye. Advanced directives are one way, but that's really how you're going to die, not what happens after you die. So I would love to learn options and know about what is possible to help your loved ones say goodbye to you without it overwhelming them.
Amen.
I think that one of the things that's helpful, if you know what you want and have some way of making sure that whoever is going to do it knows it. And for my mother, when she died, she was cremated and we scattered her ashes over the San Juans, which is what she wanted. And it had a great flight. Everybody won.
I know when my mom was dying of brain cancer, she was going to the hospital with my dad. Well, not the hospital, I meant the doctor. And all 4 of us kids were standing in their home. And she said, I want you 4 kids, your dad and I are going to the doctor. I want you 4 kids to go around this house and decide what everybody wants. And my older brother said, I'm not doing that. That's gross. That's morbid. And I said, yeah, you are. And we are. And pick a straw and let's see who goes first. And so we had the 4 of us and it started out and it was so weird, but it was actually really fun, you guys, because the things that people wanted, like I want the stuffed pheasant. Okay, I'll give you those butterflies and that painting for the stuffed pheasant. And everything we just wrote on the back of it or had a sticker on it. And it just eliminated so much who gets what when she passes over. And you felt like, yeah, I get that crystal vase because I always loved that when I was a kid. And it reminds me of my mom. And so it was really a good thing to do. I hear the stuff, dealing with people's stuff is really, can really bog people down.
That's another way of doing, of connecting in that way with your siblings, right? I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do these things. And what you were saying, Chris, about how to, make it easier or more gentle with your loved ones. I do think that some of that has to do with taking care of your business, right? Like doulas can even help with logistical, like getting rid of our boxes of stuff that are everywhere. Do we want to leave that for our children to do? I think, oh my gosh, I better burn my journals because, I don't need those around when I go. That kind of thing I think does ease the burden. And I think what else would ease the burden is just like I said, open communication about if you are dying and you have one of those good deaths where you have time to say goodbye and just open and talk about what's going on. I think it also ease the pain. Yeah, my dad is, again, I'll bring him up. My mom died a while ago, but my dad has everything. I'm so grateful to him because he has everything laid out. He's going through his boxes, 1 box at a time. And I feel like that is a gift to me. And I'd like to do that for my friends and my family in that way, in my own way, but in that way, while being conscious about it, while continuing to live pretty strongly.
So now I'm gonna be like Lori and show the other side of the coin, and that is my parents for years tried to go through their stuff, but they had a lot of stuff in a big house. And so in the end, there was a lot for us to go through. But I will say that was really great to come across all this stuff that they might not have valued, let's say, or thought anyone would be interested in. And yeah, a lot of it wasn't interesting or valuable to anybody, but then it also brought up the opportunity to reminisce among the siblings. And it was, another way of acknowledging the end of an era, let's say, going through all that stuff. So, I mean, I don't have an answer. I'm just saying that was a different scenario. And yeah, we're glad they didn't leave all of the stuff that was in that giant house, but still what was there, it was pretty fun to go through. So.
Yeah, I understand that.
Lucy, I see. Okay. Yeah.
I have been cared for several people who have died at home and been present for several deaths. And in terms of taking care of the people left behind, I think that an advanced care directive is important. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate the ability of modern medicine to extend life unnecessarily, to incur tremendous expense, to increase the suffering, not only of the person who's dying, but of the family. And part of that is a fear of death and an unwillingness to let go. But I think that is one of the most important ways. My mother, when she died, she had cancer for the second time in her life. And she decided, as one of her last gifts to us, that she wasn't going to wait around. She asked me to come take care of her. I got there and understood immediately that she did not want to wait around for the process to take care of itself. And this was in 1980s. There really were not options for death with dignity, was still, way out. And she chose not to eat or drink anything. And I said, don't do it that way. That's not a nice way to go. But she didn't want me to be responsible. Her death was not lovely. It was difficult. But it took a week instead of a year.
And did she say it wasn't lovely, or did you just say it wasn't lovely?
She suffered a lot.
Okay.
In that week, she suffered a lot. And
she was vocal about suffering?
No, she was very stoic about suffering. She went into a coma, which at the time I thought she had finally fallen asleep. But I went and took a shower, and I came back and I stood at the foot of the bed, and she opened her eyes. And at first you could tell she didn't know who I was. And then the recognition dawned on her face. And then she just began screaming, "Help me." So I know she suffered. I think she thought she died, and she was unhappy that she was still there. And also to pay attention to what goes on in the world around. After my mother died, it was in November. She lived on Clyde Hill, and there are springs that come to the surface and run across somebody's lot and then go back under the road. And one of those happened to be at the top of her driveway. And it was early in the morning, and it was very foggy and cold. And I was returning dishes to neighbors who had brought food. So I'm walking up the driveway in this dense fog, and I suddenly feel that I'm being watched. Very, very strong presence watching me. And I look around, And in this stupid little spring at the top of their driveway is the largest great blue heron that I have ever seen in my life.
Whoa.
And when we went to scatter her ashes, her brother had a boat. We went down to Shilshole and there were great blue herons on almost every single piling on the dock.
Oh,
There must have been 20.
Mm.
And the weather had been absolutely horrific. We got down to Shilshole, the clouds parted, the sun came out. We went to cross Puget Sound in the boat. The wind died. The water became glassy calm. Dolphins came and played in the bow wake. And when we scattered her ashes, a heron squawked and flew out from the shore. So it's like, okay, you wound up in a good spot. But planning for your family and loved ones is like, make it easy for them. Do your directive, do your will. Get rid of your stuff.
Thank you, Elle, for that story. It's really beautiful. I think, you know, like birth, there's this moment where you're not really here or there. And I think that in those immediate times after death, that's the same, where you are perhaps more open to these things that come through. And I fully believe there's something going on there. I had a similar experience with my mom when my brother said, we're not going to wash her. And I'm like, yeah, we are, you know, and we washed her and we sat with her. And there was a bluebird sitting, like a heron, bluebird sitting outside the window when I sat with her for 8 hours. It sat there, you know, and when I see a bluebird, I know who I'm talking to. You know, they're very powerful moments.
And there's also something about the last breath. And it sounds strange to say it, but that last exhalation is a magical thing and a magical time. It's a transition to the unknowing. And there's something about it that just fascinates me.
Me too. It's a privilege to be there.
Yeah.
In that transition to the unknown. Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to jump in here. I'm Lisa, and I was able to be with my mother when she died. We didn't always have a wonderful relationship. We were kind of antagonistic, or perhaps I was, toward each other, but she was in a care home. She was very full of life for a long time. And then she just wanted to be done because she couldn't walk very well. She just a lot of her faculties. She'd been used to being very independent, and then things kind of just came cascading down at the end. Anyway, she was in this room, and they called us about, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night and said, you better get down here. We had been spending time with her. They were in Chicago, and we had planned to come back home. But I said, you know, maybe, can we just stay another day? I just had this feeling for some reason that we needed to be there another day with my mom. And so we stayed, and the care home called us at night around, like I said, 10 o'clock. We went there, and she had already kind of lost consciousness, but I was able to crawl into the bed with her and hold her. I sang her some of the songs that she had sung to us when we were little kids, and she died in my arms. And her little pup was sitting there with Ken on the chair. My partner is Ken. And it was just so wonderful to be able to be there and hold her and sing. And I just felt like that was the reason we stayed. You know, we were supposed to be there. So that was one thing I wanted to share. And then I had two other things, just real quickly. One is a book, and I can't find it. I actually unmuted my face to go into the bedroom and see if I could find it. It's called something like I'm Dead, Now What? And it's just a book of information that you can put down, your bank accounts, things like that, for people in your family or who might be there to pick up things after you go, and try to help them see where everything is, you know. And it kind of has helped me organize myself a little bit in thinking about death. And the only other thing I wanted to share was that I've already made an arrangement with a friend of mine here who's a carpenter, and asked him to make me a box. And I want to go, I was a science teacher for a long time. I loved biology and always had the kids bringing stuff into the classroom. And I just like the idea of ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and little creatures decomposing me in the ground. So that's what I'd really like is a box, and to be there returning to the earth. That's all.
Thank you, Lisa. That's fitting for a biology teacher. I love that. And, you know, and also the whole casket, like, that's fabulous. We have, when Joe passed away this May, we did find some carpenters to make a casket. And that's something we really hope to have as resources here in the Valley, you know, for others who want that.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we definitely didn't have any requests from Joe, so it left us open to, you know, the sky was kind of the limit on what we could do for him. Joe is my ex-husband who, yeah, my daughters just, and I and Bo and Betsy and our community really came together. And somehow, I don't know exactly why or how, but I was like, let's have everybody bring, oh, I know, because for his sister, we did this. We brought all kinds of flowers and letters and things, kids' art, and put it in the casket with her. And as she was being cremated. And so we had a big ceremony where we painted the casket and filled it. Everybody brought letters and just beautiful things. And so, yeah, there is just all kinds of, and then we got to lay him to rest, you know, the girls and I, and we anointed and sang to him and spent a couple hours with him doing that process. And it was really, really healing. So, yeah. And there's all kinds of possibilities. And I just want to give a little shout out. I want to give space for anybody else who wants to share or say anything, but there are going to be a lot of upcoming programs that I think are going to just continue this really beautiful conversation. One is with Kate Wallace Johnson, who's a life cycle celebrant, and she's going to talk about different ceremony options. And, you know, I think that ceremony is something that's gotten a little bit lost in our culture along the way. It's coming back. And so it's just a real opportunity for beautiful creativity. And then there's also going to be Beverly Trick. She's a great speaker from the People's Memorial. She's going to be talking about all this. There's some different options now. Bo was talking about composting. Also, there's alkaline hydrolysis, and we'll be hearing more from Beverly. And that one is on April 13th at 4. And then we have Nancy Simmers, who's also a death doula in Bellingham. And she was an RN working in the birth unit, and then has come over to death and has worked on holding space for people who have chosen to stop eating and drinking, Lucy, like your mom. But now it's a lot more supported and hopefully less grueling of a process, because if you have dementia, you still don't have the opportunity necessarily to choose death with dignity. And so that's
Can I just say one thing about that?
Yeah.
I wanted to jump in because I was thinking about you, Lucy, when you were talking about your mom stopping eating and drinking. I would really encourage you to come to that program with Nancy Simmers. It's just, she's an amazing woman, and it's helping these people who cannot use the death with dignity law here in Washington because they have Alzheimer's or any, dementias, and they can actually plan out and have a whole team of people helping them with voluntary, stopping of eating and drinking. And unlike your mom, they have medications that can help with anxiety and things like that. So it'd be really an interesting program. And Trace, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Frauke has to go. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate you all. I feel like it's a privilege to, get older and share with each other these stories. And, I look forward to more discussions, and I'm here if people want to ask me questions or email me or Louisa about doula work or advanced planning or anything like that. And I'm just jumping in. I'm just starting. I'm just learning. So I appreciate all of you being here and being willing to talk about this beautiful and sad subject. Thanks.
Yeah. So just opening it back up. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to share?
Frauke, did you want to share something?
Bo, you can just read what I sent to you because it's too emotional for me.
Understand,
Bye, everybody.
my friend. Bye. Frauke just wants
just so people know, I did go through and do some muting because there was some background noise. So if you're trying to talk and nothing's happening, check your mute.
Could I say something?
Yes, please.
I'm getting a little feedback. My name is Karen, and about the stopping eating and drinking, my mother did that when she got a diagnosis of, terminal diagnosis of cancer. And this was up in Canada, and they gave her drugs, and it was a peaceful, beautiful death. So, and my father, who just died, I guess now it's 2 years ago this year, he ate right till the end, but he had pancreatic cancer. And when he started having pain, he let us know, and we gave him drugs, and he passed peacefully. And we were able to do a lot of that good stuff. I think what's really important, what I've learned from this, is to write down our wishes. I think all of us, after we leave this little sessions, should write down our wishes, because you never know. And if you write down your wishes, hopefully somebody will listen to that. And put it with your will and your advance directives.
Thank you, Karen. Frauke said that she wanted to remind everyone we are so blessed to have this opportunity to have this conversation, and that we take a moment to hold all the families who lost loved ones to COVID and other illnesses these past 2 years and could not be with them as they took their last breaths. Maybe just a moment here. Thank you all for being here. And let Trace know if we can have another conversation. It'd be great to have one in person.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely. We'll be hopefully opening it up. Then, of course, won't be able to have such a large scale participation. It's great having folks join us from all over. And so thank you so much, Bo. Thanks for facilitating. And Bo and I have been working together. First, we worked with kids for years, and it's just a real honor to get to work with you through the years, Bo, now on this. And we don't have a program about home funerals, about that vigil time that people have been mentioning. And so, but we're we're going to work towards that. And so you'll have to watch for that too. Any last things anybody wants to say or share in the last minute here? Anyone who didn't have a chance? And remember, you might be on mute, so you can put it in the chat or just jump in.
As my teacher said in the program I became a death doula in, which is called Going with Grace. Her name is Alua Arthur. You can look that up on any website, or if you're on social media. She's amazing. And she says, thanks for taking a minute of your life to think about the end of it.
Yeah. All right. It's 10 o'clock, and let's all enjoy this day as much as we can. Karen, I love your invitation for all of us to go and write down those wishes. Because especially if you want a home funeral, or if you want that vigil, it's going to help a lot in the process to try to make that happen, because it's a little bit tricky, but it is possible, and you can advocate for that. Betsy.
And if you want more conversation about those, that planning, obviously Bo and our death doulas in the room can be of help. But Meadow at Home is also happy to try to support you and just reach out through Meadow at Home. And we're happy to help you with documents, or to give you some guidelines or information or whatever you feel you need to complete that planning.
Yeah, thank you. Betsy is just such an amazing, amazing resource that we have here. Thank you, Betsy, for all your work with Meadow at Home, End of Life Washington, Advanced Care Planning Initiative, so many things that you're doing. And Betsy just brings so much knowledge and compassion to those conversations. So I encourage everybody to really take us up on that offer to reach out. And it might not be Betsy. Other people are trained in the conversation too. So, and yeah, there is going to be a great conversation upcoming about dementia. And I think that's a really good one to plan for. Even if you don't have any signs of dementia, it's probably easier to plan for before experiencing cognitive decline. So, or cognitive issues. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn off the recording.